If I ask you who the biggest diva quarterback is in the NFL, who would that be?
The biggest diva in the NFL. Oh shit, this is Aaron Rodgers. I'm sorry.
Four-time MVP, Super Bowl champion, and one of the most polarizing quarterbacks in NFL history. From clashing with coaches to fueling media firestorms, Rodgers has built a reputation that some call confident leadership and others call diva behavior.
I think Rodgers is a diva. I think he's been a diva the last couple of years. I thought the way he handled this whole offseason was very diva-ish.
Aaron Rodgers is toxic. If it wasn't for his talent level, we would probably have a different view and conversation about Aaron Rodgers.
But which is it? Is Aaron Rodgers a misunderstood genius or the NFL's biggest ego? Let's break it down. For 15 seasons, Aaron Rodgers was my quarterback. Yes, you heard that right. I am a cheesehead for those of you asking in the comments. While I loved him for his time in the green and yellow, things started to go downhill in the latter part of his time in Wisconsin. The once golden partnership between Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers began to tarnish, revealing cracks that would eventually shatter the foundation of one of football's most storied franchises. The 2018 season madness unfolded like a drama TV show, with power struggles, betrayals, and ultimately a parting of ways that left fans confused. In the twilight of the Mike McCarthy era, whispers of conflict grew. The 2018 season saw Rodgers boldly begin to ignore his head coach on the field. Packers tight end Mercedes Lewis recounted a chilling moment when Rodgers, upon receiving a play call from McCarthy, simply said "hell no" before calling his own shots in a huddle.
I mean, there are times where he calls his own stuff in a huddle. We're thinking we're going to run the ball. Aaron calls a pass play and throws a 40-yard pass. And we're in a huddle, and he looks, he's like, okay, Sadie, you give me this. Who's my ex? Okay, Devontae, you give me that. Jimmy, I want you off the ball on this.
Wow.
He's literally telling everybody what to do, gives a direction and a protection to the offensive line.
This act of rebellion wasn't isolated. It was a sign of a deeper problem that had been festering for years. Many speculated that it traced back to draft night in 2005, when a young 21-year-old Aaron Rodgers sat in the NFL draft green room as McCarthy's 49ers passed on him for Alex Smith. Their early Packers years sparked with Lombardi Trophy glory, but cracks emerged as Rodgers' football IQ outpaced McCarthy's playbook. By 2018, Aaron audibled out of 63% of McCarthy's called plays, according to league insiders, turning games into a psychological battleground. Former players described practices where Rodgers would audible into entirely new offenses, leaving rookie wideouts looking like deer in November hunting season. The once dominant Packers offense became a mess. Part of the reason was Mike's West Coast system, and the other part was Rodgers' backyard improvisation.
McCarthy and Rodgers don't like each other. They didn't like each other 4 years ago. Rodgers has the approval to change plays called by McCarthy as he sees fit. Sometimes Rodgers takes advantage of that. Several sources familiar with the inner workings of the Packers say it is devolved into a competition who can call the better play, and both want credit now for when things go right.
The tension between the two alpha males reached a boiling point, with Rodgers reportedly changing McCarthy's plays at the line of scrimmage with increasing frequency. The power struggle was visible, each man fighting for control of the offense, their competitive spirits clashing in a battle of wheels. As the losses mounted and the Packers season spiraled, something had to give. The breaking point came after a forgettable December 2nd game against the 2-9 Arizona Cardinals, where Green Bay lost at home 20-17. And the next morning, the news broke.
Some big sports news. The Packers have fired head coach Mike McCarthy after 13 seasons in Green Bay.
I really felt that change was needed, and kind of Mike's tenure had run its course. I think we needed a new voice.
You lose to a 2-9 team, I think you kind of have to go.
We're happy. We hated to see the Packers lose again, but we're happy there's going to be a coaching change.
And it came over our phones. He got fired. People came out of nowhere and started cheering, and people started doing shots.
And while the fans were happy with the decision, the media blamed Aaron as part of the problem.
Because I blame Aaron Rodgers far more than I ever blamed Mike McCarthy.
Aaron Rodgers is part of the problem too. And I believe that Aaron Rodgers, because this was his desire not to have McCarthy there, because Aaron Rodgers could have helped this situation out. He didn't.
He quit on Mike McCarthy, walking around wearing this ambiance, this aura all over you that says, I have no belief in this guy whatsoever. Get him the hell out of here.
While Packers CEO Mark Murphy insisted Rodgers had no part in the firing, league insiders whispered about the quarterback's $134 million extension signed months earlier, a deal that effectively made him the NFL's highest paid executive/player hybrid. The front office's decision to let McCarthy's final season play out rather than fire him mid-2016, as some advocated, now looked like a fatal miscalculation. As the Packers embarked on their first coaching search in 13 years, haunting questions lingered. Could any coach satisfy both Rodgers' thirst for control and the front office desire for structure? Had the quarterback's legendary perfectionism crossed into self-sabotage? And most crucially, did Green Bay waste the prime of a generational talent through stubborn adherence to outdated systems? But the drama was far from over. As the calendar turned to 2020, the Packers front office lobbed a grenade into their own locker room. In a move that sent shockwaves through the NFL, Green Bay traded up in a 2020 draft to select quarterback Jordan Love with a 26th overall pick. The decision blindsided Rodgers, who at 36 was still playing at an elite level. The message was clear. The clock was ticking on Rodgers' time in Green Bay. For Aaron, it was deja vu, but just not the kind that you want to experience firsthand, because just 15 years earlier, he was the young guy drafted to replace a legend. Now the roles were reversed.
And basically they said, man, we don't believe you can do this much longer, and we're going to usher you right on up out the door.
And the news hit Rodgers like a blindside sack.
I think, the general reaction at first was surprise. I think like many people, obviously not going to say that I was, thrilled by the pick.
Did you know they were taking him prior to the pick?
No, I found out
just like we did?
About 5 seconds before the
As the pick was announced, the message from the front office was clear. The clock was ticking on his time in Green Bay. The Jordan Love selection marked the beginning of a cold war between Rodgers and Packers management. The quarterback felt betrayed, undervalued, and began flexing his considerable muscle. He demanded more control over roster decisions and play calling, even threatening retirement if his wishes weren't met. The relationship between star and team had developed into a high-stakes game of chicken. Unlike Favre, Rodgers had given no indication of retiring anytime soon. He had spoken openly about playing into his 40s and finishing his career in the green and yellow. Now those dreams seemed to be crumbling before his eyes.
Not only did you take a quarterback in the first round, you traded up to make sure you were able to get him in the first round. So Aaron Rodgers is basically saying, Skip, I know that if I want to play into my 40s, it's going to be elsewhere.
However, as the shock wore off, a cold anger settled in. This wasn't just about football. This was personal. The Packers hadn't just drafted his potential replacement. They had failed to inform him, to prepare him. In Rodgers' mind, it was betrayal at its highest level. The days that followed were a whirlwind of speculation and tension. Aaron maintained a stoic public face, but behind the scenes, a storm was brewing.
He should feel disgusted. He should feel insulted. And as far as I'm concerned, if I was Aaron Rodgers, I'd ask to be traded. To hell with all of them. Kick rock.
The mere thought of Rodgers in another uniform was crazy to think of in Wisconsin. Yet, suddenly it seemed all too possible. As the 2020 season approached, the tension simmered just below the surface. Rodgers, ever the competitor, channeled his anger into his play. He would go on to have one of the best seasons of his career, winning the NFL MVP award and leading the Packers back to the NFC Championship game. But beneath the stellar statistics and good wins, a cold war had begun. From 2021 to 2022 reads like a high-stakes drama, with the star quarterback holding all the cards and the franchise desperately trying to keep its winning hand intact. Picture this, it's spring of 2021 and Lambeau Field is surrounded in uncertainty. Rodgers had just come off another MVP season, but instead of basking in the glow of success, he's absent from team activities, which started rumors like, is this the end of an era?
Aaron Rodgers has told certain members of the organization that he does not want to return to the Green Bay Packers.
You had to see it coming when reports surfaced that Aaron Rodgers was in the group text with some of his teammates mocking the general manager.
As OTAs roll around, the empty locker where Rodgers should be speaks volumes. Everyone was on edge. Aaron, meanwhile, was playing chess while everyone was playing checkers. He's just not asking for a new contract. He's demanding a seat at the table where decisions are made. But just imagine being in the Packers front office, feeling the weight of history and expectation bearing down. Do you give in the demands of your franchise quarterback, or do you stand your ground and risk losing a generational talent? Because Aaron didn't just want to throw touchdowns, he wanted to call the shots. He was pushing for control over roster moves, coach's decisions, a level of power unprecedented for a player, and he wasn't afraid to use every tool at his disposal. Then retirement rumors started to swirl, each one like a dagger to the heart of cheeseheads everywhere.
I talked at length at various times about being comfortable walking away. I don't want to create more questions than I probably already have. But I don't fear retirement.
Then, just when the situation couldn't get more tense, he signed a massive contract extension in March of 2022, making him the highest paid player in NFL history on an annual basis. For a moment, it appears the storm has passed, but in Green Bay, you know better than to think it's over. The 2022 season unfolded like a slow-motion car crash. Rodgers is there, but that legendary QB is missing. The team struggles, and whispers of discomfort grew louder. By the end of the season, it was clear something had to give. And then, in a twist that shocks the NFL world, the unthinkable happens.
Breaking news. Aaron Rodgers officially is being traded to the New York Jets. This year? Well, hold on! Big swagoo, hold on!
As the dust settles, fans were left to wonder, was it worth it? Did Rodgers' push for control ultimately cost him the very thing he was fighting for? A chance to cement his legacy in Green Bay? And what does this mean for the future of player power in the NFL? But Aaron's exit from Green Bay didn't mean he was leaving drama behind. In New York, he had wasted no time making his mark, both on and off the field. When he arrived in the Big Apple, he brought with him a hurricane of expectations, demands, and an ego that threatened to overtake the entire Jets organization. The franchise, desperate for a savior, had unknowingly opened Pandora's box. His wish list for roster reads like a Green Bay Packers alumni newsletter. Randall Cobb and Alan Lazard found themselves donning Jets green, a clear sign of Rodgers' pull within the organization. The Jets front office, eager to appease their new star, even gave the green light to push for Nathaniel Hackett as offensive coordinator, despite his disastrous stint as head coach in Denver. But fate had other plans. In a cruel twist of irony, Aaron's Jets debut lasted a mere snaps before an Achilles injury sidelined him for the season. As the 2024 season brought new hopes, Rodgers was back on the field, but the chemistry with his new team seemed off. As the season unfolded, the Jets' struggles mounted, and Rodgers' frustration grew. Week after week, his performances fell short of the lofty expectations set by his Hall of Fame-worthy career. The team's record plummeted, and with each loss, his demeanor on the sideline grew darker, and his post-game press conferences became more blunt.
The organization now, it's 14 straight years without making the playoffs. That's almost hard to do, right?
I mean, I've been here, I've started 1 year, so
Right.
I'm a part of it for 1 year.
The tension reached a boiling point during a pivotal mid-season game. In a moment that will be replayed endlessly on sport networks, Rodgers was seen aggressively shoving his head coach on the sideline. This incident ignited a firestorm of debate. Was this the passion of a fierce competitor or unprofessional behavior of a prima donna past his prime? Saleh and Rodgers attempted to downplay the incident.
What was that awkward exchange with you and Robert? You appeared to push him away when he...
No, it was not really awkward at all. I didn't know, he's not a big hugger usually, so I didn't know he was going for the hug.
You know, part of the things that we'd been talking about is to just get the defense a 2-score lead. I guess it was, he just wanted to see something on defense.
But the cracks in their relationship was evident. Sources close to the team whispered of heated arguments behind closed doors, disagreements over play calling, and a growing problem between the quarterback and the coaching staff. In the locker room, Rodgers' presence became increasingly estranging. Some young players like rookie Braylon Allen spoke on their desire not to disappoint the legendary quarterback. Others, however, began to get annoyed by Rodgers' critical eye and demanding nature. The quarterback's tendency to publicly criticize teammates, like his call-out of Mike Williams, only amplified the tension.
He puts his hand up, 3 guys go with him, so I'm throwing a no look to the red line. And when I just peek my eyes back there, he's running an inbreaker. So it's got to be down the red line.
As the season wore on, reports emerged of a fractured locker room. Boomer Esiason, a former Jets QB himself, said it plain and simple. I don't think Aaron Rodgers is well liked in the locker room. Quite honestly, it doesn't really surprise me. He's a tricky, complex individual. The Jets' experiment with Rodgers had managed just a 5-12 record, with Aaron throwing for 3,800 yards, 28 touchdowns, and 11 interceptions. For a team that had mortgaged its future on the promise of Rodgers' golden arm, the results were nothing short of disastrous. Then, in a final twist, just 2 years into what was supposed to be a late career resurgence, the Jets informed Rodgers they were moving on. Just a day before the Day of Love, the Jets tweeted, "We have informed Aaron Rodgers that we will be moving in a different direction at quarterback." The Aaron Rodgers era in New York would have begun with such fanfare and optimism ended not with a bang, but with a whimper. As the dust settled on this ill-fated chapter, one question lingers in the mind of Jets fans across the world. Had Aaron Rodgers' ego fully outgrown his ability to lead a team to victory? The answer, it seemed, was blowing in the wind over MetLife Stadium, where the ghost of quarterbacks past continued to haunt the Jets' future. But for all his on-field clashes, some of Rodgers' biggest headlines came away from the game, which adds to the reason why he gets that diva label put on him. Like in the summer of 2016, as football fans eagerly awaited the upcoming NFL season, an unexpected bomb dropped from an unlikely source, reality TV. As millions tuned in to watch The Bachelorette, they were treated to an unexpected subplot, the unraveling of the Rodgers family drama. Jordan Rodgers, Aaron's younger brother and a contestant on the show, told some news that sent shockwaves through the NFL community. He revealed that Aaron was not very close with his family.
Aaron don't really have that much of a relationship. It's just kind of the way he's chosen to do life. It's not ideal, and I love him, and you know, I can't imagine what it's like to be in his shoes.
The news was shocking, leaving viewers scrambling to make sense of this hidden aspect of Rodgers' life. The controversy cast a long shadow over Aaron's public persona. Fans who had once seen him as the wholesome face of the franchise now wondered what lay beneath the surface.
Since he's left high school, he has not had a whole bunch of significant relationships, that either being on the field or off the field.
Was the family estrangement a sign of a deeper character flaw, or was Rodgers simply a private person thrown unwillingly into the spotlight? Years of silence followed. Fans wondered, gossip swirled, but Aaron kept quiet until finally he opened up in a documentary. His words painted a picture of a family divided not by hate but by difference. I grew up in a very white, dogmatic church that just didn't really serve me.
I was quiet about it because I thought the best way to do it was just don't talk about it publicly. When you have some dysfunction or some separation in your family life, you have to kind of reparent yourself. And I think for me, I just wanted to hear, I'm proud of you. I had to find a way to be my own parent in those moments.
This wasn't about hatred towards his family, but about finding his own path. The rigid structure that had shaped his childhood now felt like a cage to a man he'd become. This revolution added a new layer to the Aaron Rodgers we thought we knew. The man who could read defenses like a book struggled to navigate the complex playbook of family dynamics. As fans digested this new information, questions arose. How much of Rodgers' famous intensity came from this family rift? Was his relentless pursuit of perfection on the field a way to fill the void left by estranged relationships? But then, he brought that negative light onto himself in 2020. The COVID-19 pandemic brought the world to its knees, and even the NFL, who hadn't seen anything like this before. But around this time, Aaron Rodgers found himself at the center of controversy that would tarnish his carefully crafted image and divided fans across the nation. It all began in August 2021, when a reporter asked him the question everyone was waiting for.
Are you vaccinated, and what's your stance on vaccinations?
Yeah, I've been immunized.
The room buzzed with approval, assuming that their star quarterback had done his part to protect himself and others.
Yeah, I've been immunized.
But just 3 months later, the news broke that he had tested positive.
Aaron Rodgers is out. According to colleague Tom Pelissero, he has tested positive for COVID-19.
The thought of him being unvaccinated was like a shocker, because it was like he lied to us, and the media killed him for it.
How bad does Aaron Rodgers look this morning?
Aaron Rodgers is a liar.
He lied to his team with a smirk on his face and regarding a matter that is very, very serious.
The fans who cheered for his every touchdown now felt betrayed, wondering how their hero could have misled them so blatantly. In the days that followed, Rodgers took to the Pat McAfee Show not to apologize but to push back against his critics. He spoke of cancel culture and a woke mob, claiming he had been a victim of a witch hunt.
I realize I'm in the crosshairs of the woke mob right now, so before my final nail gets put in my cancel culture casket, I think I'd like to set the record straight. First of all, I didn't lie in the initial press conference. During that time, it was a very, witch hunt that was going on across the league, where everybody in the media was so concerned about who was vaccinated and who wasn't, and what that meant, and who was being selfish, and who would talk about it.
He would go on to cite concerns about vaccine ingredients and fertility, positions that put him at odds with mainstream medical advice. As he spoke, the divide between Rodgers and much of his fan base grew wider by the minute. The NFL was pissed. They fined the Packers and slapped Rodgers with a $14,650 fine for violating protocols. And he lost a sponsorship with a health center up in Wisconsin, which he had been in partnership with since 2012. Aaron had found himself cast as a villain in a public health drama. For nearly 3 years, Rodgers stood firm and unapologetic about his stance. But as the world slowly emerged from the shadows of the pandemic, he finally broke his silence. In August 2024, he admitted to regretting his immunized comment, acknowledging that he should have been more transparent. But this came too late for many, but for others, it was a glimmer of accountability they had long sought for. As the dust settled on the COVID-19 controversy, Aaron Rodgers found himself at the center of yet another political firestorm. In May of 2022, Kennedy Jr., running as an independent candidate for the 2024 U.S. presidential election, reportedly approached Rodgers to be his vice president running mate. The suggestion of a four-time NFL MVP stepping into a political arena sent shockwaves through both the sports and political circles.
ABC News has confirmed NFL quarterback Aaron Rodgers is on Kennedy's short list of potential running mates.
Before people think I'm going to get up here and say, oh, Aaron Rodgers is egotistical, oh, Aaron Rodgers is arrogant, Aaron Rodgers would be right to be the vice presidential candidate.
Rodgers, known for his outspoken views on topics like medical freedom and skepticism of government mandates, seemed like an unconventional yet fitting choice for Kennedy's outsider campaign. Rodgers later revealed that he had meaningful conversations with Kennedy about the offer, but ultimately turned it down.
We had a couple really nice conversations, but there were really two options. It was retire and be his VP, or keep playing, and I want to keep playing.
While the quarterback's decision to stick with the gridiron over the campaign trail seemed practical, it further fueled speculation about his political leanings and willingness to embrace controversial figures and ideas. For many, it was another chapter of the story of Rodgers as a man who thrived on standing apart from the crowd. Now let's talk about the Pat McAfee Show, a platform that became Aaron's personal pulpit, some would argue his undoing. Every Tuesday, like clockwork, Aaron would appear on the McAfee Show, apparently to discuss football. But as the weeks went by, it became clear that these appearances were about much more than the X and O's. They were Aaron's unfiltered, unscripted, and often unhinged moments. The show became a stage where Rodgers would air his grievances, attack his critics, and push back against the media narrative.
How nice you are with your time with us every single Tuesday. People have learned a lot about you through this show, and I'm very thankful for that. Every Tuesday, I think a lot of thoughts were potentially changed about you. People that once thought something about you changed after hearing you speak.
No topic was off limits, no opinion too controversial. In early 2024, Rodgers sparked a major controversy. On the show, he hinted that Jimmy Kimmel might be connected to Jeffrey Epstein.
This has something to do with the Epstein list that came out?
Feels like
That's supposed to be coming out soon. That's supposed to be coming out soon. A lot of people, including Jimmy Kimmel, are really hoping that doesn't.
Kimmel didn't take it lightly. He fired back on social media, threatening to sue Rodgers by tweeting he had never met, flown with, visited, or any type of contact with Epstein, and that his name would not be on any list, and how Rodgers also put his family in danger, and if Aaron kept up the nonsense, he would be taking him to court. This wasn't just about Rodgers and Kimmel. It showed that Rodgers' appearances on McAfee's show could cause real problems. His words reached millions, and without anyone to check him, he sometimes said things that angered folks. The fallout was intense. Jimmy used his own show to hit back at Aaron, calling him Karen Rodgers and spending several minutes criticizing him.
Aaron Rodgers has a very high opinion of himself. Because he had success on the football field, he believes himself to be an extraordinary being. We learned during COVID, somehow he knows more about science than scientists. A guy who went to community college, then got into Cal on a football scholarship and didn't graduate, someone who never spent a minute studying the human body, is an expert in the field of immunology. Aaron got 2 A's on his report card. They were both in the word Aaron, okay?
Meanwhile, Aaron didn't hold back. He returned to the McAfee Show, refusing to apologize and instead doubling down on his views.
Like Jimmy Kimmel has been called a pedophile, I think, by a lot of people because his name has been on one of those lists on the internet for a long time.
Like, those are serious accusations meant for people who are on the list. And again, there was some names that came out recently from a deposition from 2005.
This feud highlighted a growing problem. Rodgers' weekly appearances were becoming a source of controversy and distraction. The Pat McAfee Show had become Rodgers' soapbox, but it was also becoming his downfall. His unfiltered words were causing more harm than good, and the NFL world was starting to get tired of the constant drama. As the dust settled on this controversy, everyone began to wonder, had Aaron finally gone too far? And would he ever learn to think before he spoke? However, this wasn't the only mess he got into on the Pat McAfee Show. Aaron and Ryan Clark also went back and forth for a few weeks. Rodgers' feud with Clark began after he made his weekly appearance on no other than the Pat McAfee Show, when he talked about the current state of sports media, especially ESPN's longtime hit show, SportsCenter.
Both non-players, non-former players, and former players who trying to stay relevant fame-wise. So the takes and the criticism, they believe they're the celebrities now, they're the stars for just being able to talk about sports or give a take about sports. That wasn't going on in 2008, 2009. That was non-existent.
Now, Aaron didn't call out Clark specifically in his critique of ESPN, but he did reference that there were former players on the air whose main goal wasn't necessarily to break down the NFL. And of course, those former players were going to respond. They had a segment on First Take where they discussed Aaron's comment, and Ryan Clark basically called Aaron a fraud and hypocritical. He pointed out that Rodgers was doing exactly what he criticized others for, being paid to give opinions on sports.
Who are you really talking about?
I find it extremely funny that he's saying this on a show with a man who, as great as he was as a punter, is far more famous as a pundit. Actually, Aaron Rodgers, you're being paid to be on that show to give your thoughts and opinions as a personality. My issue with him is you're doing the exact same thing. This dude is once again tone deaf. This dude is once again unaware. This dude is once again arrogant to a point that's almost sickening. But they ain't people around here that come around and talk about what type of leader you are. They ain't people that come around here and talk about wanting to follow you because of the type of man you have been.
And it didn't stop there. Aaron responded by low-key sneak dissing Ryan by challenging him to state his vax stats. This was seen as reference to the controversy surrounding Aaron's COVID-19 vaccination status in 2021.
Say whatever the fuck you want about me, I don't care. But just before you do it, whether you state your name, your accolades, pronouns, whatever it is, just state your vax status. Then say whatever the hell you want to say about me, because I couldn't give two shits about it.
Ryan responded again, this time off air, by posting a nearly 5-minute video on social media addressing Rodgers' comments. He accused Aaron of using the vaccination issue to distract the legitimate criticism of his on-field performance.
And also, people didn't care that you weren't vaccinated. They cared that you were slimy about it. They cared that you were deceitful about it. And you've kind of only been the only person that's talked about it since. But let me be very, very clear. My job is to analyze you. And in analyzing you, what I know is your QBR is 21st. I also know that you're the quarterback of a 4-10 team who has to win the last 3 games of the season to even be equal to what last year's team was without you.
This little back and forth beef garnered attention from other media personalities like Stephen A. Smith, who warned Rodgers about escalating the situation.
So Aaron Rodgers can't come at Ryan Clark the way he would come at, say, somebody like me who's never played football. And so when you tried to come at him that way, that was mistake number 1. Mistake number 2, you brought up the vax status. Ryan Clark pointed out it wasn't that you took the vaccine or that you didn't take the vaccine, is that he used the word slimy. I'm saying you were lying.
For some, Aaron speaking his mind was refreshing. In an era of carefully crafted PR statements and bland athlete interviews, here was a superstar willing to speak his mind and not give a damn about the consequences or backlash. But for others, these weekly appearances were damaging his legacy. This situation got so bad that reports emerged that Jets had given Rodgers an ultimatum: stop appearing on the Pat McAfee Show or find a new team. It was a stark reminder of how far Rodgers had pushed the envelope and how his off-field persona had overshadowed his on-field performance. But one thing is certain, the Pat McAfee Show has forever changed the way we view Aaron Rodgers. Whether the change is for better or worse, only time will tell. And if you tune into the Pat McAfee Show, what you think about this situation? Should Rodgers be open and speak his mind, or just stop it all because it's hurting his image? However, his career has been a roller coaster of brilliant plays and heated controversies. As we look back, we can't help but to wonder, is he a misunderstood genius or an egotistical diva? Unlike T. Brady, Peyton Manning, or even Brett Favre, Rodgers seemed to demand more control over team decisions. He pushed for specific players to be signed and even had a say in coaching staff choices. Some fans saw it as a superstar rightfully displaying his influence, while others viewed it as overstepping boundaries. Which side of the fence are you on? Off the field, Rodgers' reputation took hit after hit, from misleading statements about his vaccination status to hinting at conspiracy theories on popular podcasts. He often found himself in hot water. And these controversies didn't just stay in a news cycle for a day or two. They lingered, shaping how people saw both the player and person. His time with the Jets was meant to be a fresh start, a chance to prove he could lead another team to glory like Brady did with the Buccaneers and Peyton did with the Broncos. Instead, it became a cautionary tale. Injuries and underwhelming performances left fans wondering if Aaron Rodgers' magic had finally run out. As Aaron Rodgers' career currently has a question mark on it, we're left to ponder on how history will remember him. Will it be for his incredible arm talent and those Hail Mary passes that seem to defy physics? Or will it be for the drama, the controversies, and the what ifs? Some argue that Rodgers' demands for control were justified. After all, he was the one on the field reading defenses and making split-second decisions. Shouldn't he have a say in who he's throwing to? In the end, Aaron Rodgers' legacy is complex. He's undoubtedly one of the most talented quarterbacks to ever play the game. His stats speak for themselves: the touchdowns, the MVP awards, and Super Bowl ring. But his journey has been far from smooth. So I'll ask you, after this video and everything you know, is Aaron Rodgers a misunderstood genius, constantly pushing for excellence in a system that didn't always understand him? Or was he an egotistical diva, demanding more than his fair share of control and attention? However, one thing is certain, he will be remembered, whether it's for admiration or frustration, or likely a mix of both. Aaron Rodgers has left an incredible mark on the NFL, and that perhaps is his true legacy.